do you feel like it was easier for you to kind of leave your previous thinking once you had kids? And the reason I ask that is, once again, I haven't been religious since I was like 10. I've gone back and forth, but I know like one of the positives I can see, and there are a number of like community and stuff like that, is that there's something bigger than you. And I think as we get older, we can have something bigger as we build a company, and there's the family there, or we can have kids, and all of a sudden, like, even though I told myself after I had my first son that wouldn't take over my mind, it definitely did. It changed the way that I was thinking, and everything became like a bigger, longer thought. Was that, do you feel like maybe part of that played in, or is that completely off base? I
think that the fact that we had kids and going through this spiritual deconstruction made it much scarier. Yeah. And because we were raised and we were so devout and so devoted to not only God, but the Bible, and to the particular teaching from the church we grew up in and the churches that we attended through those years. We had this highest calling and like this big picture sense, and like all of our decisions were extremely weighty our entire lives, that when I don't think I experienced to the degree that I hear other people, and maybe the way you describe it, as when I had my first child, it didn't blow me away, because that wasn't as it just wasn't a turning point, because it was
part of the script.
It was part of the script. So it was pretty terrifying once we each individually started to realize, again, in our own processes, that, okay, my beliefs are changing, and this is calling into question, like, well, what does this mean for my kids? Because there was a lot of comfort in, I don't have all the answers, but I feel like I have a lot of answers. And as a parent, that's one of the things you want to give your kids the most, is you want to give them protection, you want to give them love, and I think you want to give them answers, because it feels like the other two things.
Well, that's why religion has been so successful, right? It works. It gives you a sense of purpose. It does give you something bigger than yourself. It gives you sort of a play-by-play or manual, a rule book of how to be a dad and how to be a father, what to teach your kids. And so I think that, you're sort of in this, whatever it is that we are right now. I call myself a hopeful agnostic right now, but I don't have the structure or the community or the singular sort of well-defined purpose that I did. And that's a problem. And I think one of the reasons that I don't know exactly what I think about God, but I know for a fact that, like, when you use the example of, we've got this thing that we're trying to build together in mythical entertainment or whatever, but I already know that regardless of how successful and how well this all goes, that I'm not going to find any real, pure, ultimate joy and satisfaction in just being successful, right? It's like, I know that seeking things for myself is ultimately I need something bigger than myself and just bigger than what we're doing. But I think that trying to figure out, so I feel like a lot of those answers get manufactured, because it's like, well, we got to have something. I think a simplistic sort of model of this is Ricky Gervais' movie, The Invention of Lying, right? Where once he sort of starts saying some things about what happens after you die, everyone is clamoring to hear him say more, because up until that point, no one thought anything happened. And so people are so desperate for those answers. I don't think we should stop seeking those answers. I think we should just be honest about whether or not that we can know some of those answers. So I think this is a cultural problem that we've got to figure out. Like, the world has got to figure this out, right? Because I don't think that the old way of thinking is going to survive, but I don't think it can be replaced with just a strictly my guess is that it just can't be replaced with a strictly naturalistic view of the world in which it's all chaos and it's all purposeless and we're just an accident. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that humanity can bear that, so.
Well, because it feels like I imagine for me, it's always, there's so much injustice that like chaos has been like the only reasonable explanation in my head. Because otherwise, what would I praise that enabled it?
I completely get that.
Okay.
And I think for me, I'm not talking so much about, I don't even think that I don't think I'm ever going to figure that out. But I think that when you talk about justice, and I think about my kids, it's like getting them to understand that, you're going to live a much more fulfilled life if you devote it ultimately to other people, right? And I think that even into doing the things that we're doing with trying to build this media empire or whatever it is we're trying to do, the moment it becomes just about us and what we can do and the legacy that we can leave behind personally, I think it becomes pretty empty. But I think the moment that you say, oh, but how can this, it sounds like a cliche, make the world a better place? How can this help people? How can this bring the most good in the most people's lives? That's something that I can actually get excited about long-term, getting up and doing every single day. So I think it's just trying to find a way to get our kids to connect with what does bringing more justice in the world look like, and how can I make my life be centered on that,
and also to really seek to know themselves, understand themselves, and love themselves, and aspire to, as we talked about earlier, be the best version of yourself that you can be, and do that without imposing a lot of guilt that I realized looking back, there was a lot of shame and guilt associated with my internal dialogue that I never shared with anybody. And I want to give my kids the gift of freedom to be honest with themselves and accept themselves in a way that I don't think I was able to do at their age.
Do you feel like, actually, I know that I said I was going to go off, but I'm kind of just trying to read both of you. Do you feel like this has hit you guys at different levels as far as the reaction? Like,
I think it's hit us in different ways for sure.
Because once again, this is just based off of how I'm feeling it. You seem a little, not aggro. Aggro is not the right word, but you're like ready for it. And I feel like you are like hurt from it is the vibe that I'm getting from you. Or am I wrong?
I mean, and our stories are very different, right? And I think that they are very intertwined, and it's not to say that it's not that my story is just an emotional process and Rhett's is just an intellectual process, but I mean I think those are the differences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my tendency is to want to defend and explain myself, and a lot of times I realize that that's not always motivated by a true interest in the truth. It's just kind of motivated by my ego and wanting to be right. And that's why we've decided to not really make ear biscuits about like following up and answering questions in a way that's like, let me tell you why I was right, or let me tell you what my process really was so you can quit misrepresenting it.
I imagine it's also hard on a topic like this because, to steal a phrase from Dr. Mike, anyone that's so certain, right, is a IKA expert and I know all expert. Yeah. And for something so unknowable, I imagine that's just a frustration point.
Yeah. So so for me, but that's not Link's personality. It's not to like enter into a debate.
Sure.
Right.
So I think that's why we're reacting in different ways. But the interesting
I would never
thing
make a show like your show. Like I would always watch your show.
Or this one.
No, you're
the PDS. Sure. Yeah.
Where you confidently assert your opinion on so many things.
I'm so hot and cold on that, but yeah.
But like,
but I would.
He definitely would. Like that is not within me. So I don't think it's that I'm just hurt. I think I'm processing my emotions, and that's part of it. But it's not. It's not just that. I'm also filled with a lot of
very, like,
joy associated with what's happened.
Whenever you get into something that is like whenever you kind of get into a gray area that is polarizing, you handle that very well. You're very careful about like It could be this. It could be that.
I mean, even that's been a little bit of an evolution, just because 2-3 years ago, I was definitely in the pursuit of being fair. I was making lots of false equivalencies. And so like, that's been something that I've been having to adjust.
It's tough to figure it out.
Yeah. Figure it out.
To find the balance.